Hi, this is Wendy again. This is part three of The Battle Was Heart Deep. The War of the Minds, you know. So, this one is not about the pragmatic stuff. In part two, I decided I skipped one. I want to talk about when you talk about the heart and living by your heart and soul and the war of the minds, the negative versus the positive. The first step to doing that is understanding and setting your values. And this is so important. I know that you have values, everyone has values, but have you really thought about what they mean and what they are? Because we were raised with values kind of higgledy-piggledy, right? Our parents had values of some sort, and we were told, don't um, steal. Well, some people were taught not to steal, and some people were not taught that as a value. Depends on your upbringing, eh? And then society says, don't run through red lights and don't do this. But they are not values that are personal and heart deep and soul deep. So I'm talking about the values that are so intrinsically connected to you that no matter what, when you've set them, no matter what happens, you will go back to them, and they're kind of like the solid foundations of your castle. Okay, so when you have when we have these airy fairy wishy-washy values set by the government, by whoever outside, they changed. The government changes them at will. So they're not real values. They're not, running through a red light or running, I'm not saying that go ahead and run through red lights doesn't matter because you'll kill yourself or someone else. But I'm talking about the values that are so intrinsically deep inside you that no matter whatever happens to you, you're going to stick by them. They're so important to you that they are connected to your whole well-being and your soul. And they are so important to you that when they are broken, it's pretty hard for someone else breaks them and you've set them and you've told them what your values are if they've broken them. It's pretty tricky. It's really hard to get that back, that respect or whatever back. So I want you to do an exercise after this short podcast. Oh, come on, keep listening. On your values. What are your deep values? Okay, so I just wrote a few down. You don't have to go by these. These are just mine that I live by. So to me, honesty. I'm a Capricorn, I'm sorry, but honesty is so important. And to me, it's being truthful with kindness. But whenever someone hasn't been truthful with me, oh my gosh, it bites me a bit, I have to say. And now and then, through when I was coming through my recovering through my trauma and alcoholism and all that, I wasn't always truthful. I know that, and I regret that. But when you're coming through trauma, and if when you have values, sometimes, and you'll know this, we're all human. Don't worry about this. We are human. But even though when we're coming through trauma, sometimes we break our own values and we regret it. But get yourself up, dust yourself off, and go, that was a learning lesson. I don't want to do that again. I don't feel good about myself doing that. So be kind to yourself, set your values. When you break them, be honest and go, man, I'm so annoyed at myself that I broke that. That was important to me. Okay, so the second one I've got, you don't have to have it, I've got respect. And so for me, communicating with someone else and someone else communicating with me with swearing and anger and irrational ranting is not good, respectful dialogue. So respect for me is a big one. Integrity means that you follow through on what you say you do and you do what you say. And I can then see that you are, saying what you're saying. I can see is clearly true. So, compassion, and I have to be honest. Compassion is about cutting people slack sometimes when they need it, and talking through what's happened, why you're annoyed about something, but saying, look, is there something I can help, because this is not working? And so again, really hard to have compassion all the time when you're really pissed off with someone. Finding gratitude, joy, and saying thank you, those things of appreciation is an important value that I have, and we don't do enough of it in our world of this busyness. Apologizing at the right time for the right reason. Sometimes I see people who are coming through trauma who over apologize. They apologize for things actually they shouldn't have to, and say it at times when they don't need to, and it undermines their own self-worth and self-esteem. So be mindful of when you apologize and when you don't apologize, and when you think you should be apologizing. So those are my, there's probably a couple more, but I just wanted to rattle off a few to talk to you about setting your values. So when you set your values, when you have a war of your mind, so going back to the war of the minds again, of the negative and the positive, and trying the positive, so if I looked at my life, if I'm going to put my hands up like that, and if it was a spectrum of negative thoughts and positive thoughts, when I was coming through my trauma, and even when I'm feeling trauma about something quick, my thought patterns, if this was my thought patterns for a day, and I thought about how many negative thoughts I had versus positive, I would have like 70% negative reactions. I was like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking that way. I have to stop thinking negatively or having negative reactions. I have to be, for my own well-being, find a way through those negative thoughts. And so this if this was from here to here was all my thoughts, here we are, there's a whole day, right? And if I said, well, when I'm going through my trauma, when I was coming through my trauma, this much of my thoughts for the day were negative and this part was positive. It was just shocking. And it's the way it is. Don't be hard on yourself. That's the war of the minds. So when I'm much more healed, I'm a human, so this might be positive thoughts of all of my thoughts, and this might be negative. It's kind of that part. So it's okay, but be aware of the war of the minds. That's what we're learning about. It's about not letting outside conquer us by negativity and negative thoughts, and it's us taking control of the mind and the positivity and conquering that, and being conquerors in our own space and conquerors in that outside space. Because if you think about it, if the whole world, if we built more people around in our communities and in our families who thought that way, more positively and more meaningfully, and with positivity and thoughtfulness and compassion instead of reaction and negativity, man, what a great world we would have, eh? And these guys who are trying to pull us apart and cause friction in our communities and in our countries, they would lose. They would lose the battle of hearts deep. Anyway, this is part 3. Part 4 is about living heart deep with your soul, and the pragmatic stuff about work-life balance, bullying, trauma, abuse, toxic family, friends, all that stuff. So that's the last one, part 4 of War of the Minds. See you soon. Bye.